The art of masking and mirroring. You think you know who you are, but the person you present to the world, that's not you. That's a performance so practiced, so polished, so perfectly calibrated to survive, that you've forgotten you're wearing a mask at all. And the truly unsettling part? Everyone around you is doing the exact same thing. We are all actors, and the stage never closes. Welcome to the theater of human interaction, where authenticity is the rarest commodity, and deception is the universal language. This is about masking and mirroring, the two ancient psychological mechanisms that govern almost every interaction you've ever had. And by the end of this, you won't just understand how others manipulate you, you'll realize how deeply you've been manipulating yourself. The origin of the mask. Let's start at the beginning, not your beginning, the beginning. Before language, before civilization, before you had words to describe what you felt, you were raw, unfiltered, pure need and pure expression. When you were hungry, you cried. When you were angry, you screamed. When you felt love, you reached out without calculation. And then the world taught you that this was unacceptable. Your parents flinched when you expressed rage. Your teachers punished you for being too loud, too quiet, too different. Society handed you an invisible script and said, if you want to survive here, you'll play the part we've written for you. And so you did what every human does. You learned to hide. Carl Jung called this the persona, the social mask we construct to interface with the world. But here's what most people miss. The persona isn't just a mask you put on and take off. It becomes your face. You wear it so long, so consistently, that the boundary between the mask and the self dissolves. You forget where the performance ends and where you begin. The child who learned that anger was dangerous becomes the adult who smiles through betrayal. The child who is punished for crying becomes the adult who can't access their own grief. The child who was only loved when they performed becomes the adult who exhausts themselves trying to be impressive. Your mask is not a choice. It's a survival mechanism carved into your psychology by 1,000 small moments of rejection. The architecture of deception. But masking is only half the equation. Because while you were learning to hide yourself, you were simultaneously learning to read others. You were becoming fluent in the language of masks. And that's where mirroring enters. Mirroring is the chameleon's gift. It's the ability to reflect back to others exactly what they want to see. When someone is angry, you become calm to soothe them. When someone is insecure, you become affirming to stabilize them. When someone craves dominance, you offer just enough submission to let them feel powerful. This isn't kindness, it's strategy. Machiavelli understood this better than most. He knew that power doesn't belong to those who are authentic. It belongs to those who can become whatever the moment requires. The prince who mirrors his subjects' values, who reflects their fears and desires back to them in a language they recognize, is the prince who survives. But mirroring operates at a level far deeper than political theater. It happens in every conversation, every relationship, every interaction where something is at stake. You do it without thinking. You adjust your tone when speaking to your boss. You soften your edges around someone fragile. You sharpen them around someone who respects strength. You laugh at jokes you don't find funny. You nod at opinions you don't share. You become the version of yourself that gets what you need. And here's the devastating truth. Most of the time, you don't even realize you're doing it. The dance of mutual deception. Now imagine two people meeting, both wearing masks, both unconsciously mirroring. What you get is not connection. What you get is a dance of mutual deception, so elegant, so synchronized, that both parties believe it's real. She mirrors his confidence because she senses he needs to feel admired. He mirrors her warmth because he senses she needs to feel safe. Neither is lying exactly, but neither is telling the truth either. They are performing compatibility. And if the performance is good enough, they'll call it love. Alan Watts described this beautifully when he spoke about the games people play. We create roles for each other, the strong one and the vulnerable one, the rational one and the emotional one, the giver and the taker. And we perform these roles so convincingly that we forget we ever had a choice. But underneath the performance, there's a question neither person wants to ask. If I stopped mirroring you, would you still want me? If I stopped performing, would you still stay? The answer terrifies us. Most relationships are not built on the truth of who we are. They're built on the carefully curated versions we've agreed to show each other. The shadow behind the mask. And this brings us to what Jung called the shadow. All the parts of yourself you've deemed unacceptable. All the rage, the selfishness, the darkness, the weakness you've hidden behind your mask. The shadow doesn't disappear just because you've hidden it. It grows, it festers, it waits. You've probably met someone who seems perfect on the surface, always composed, always kind, always in control. And then one day, without warning, something cracks. The rage erupts. The cruelty emerges. The chaos breaks through. And everyone is shocked. How could someone so good be capable of that? But it's not a surprise. It's an inevitability. Because the tighter the mask, the more pressure builds underneath. The more you deny your shadow, the more violently it will eventually express itself. This is why the person who constantly preaches morality is often the one caught in scandal. Why the one who performs perfect happiness is often drowning in secret despair. Why the one who seems invulnerable is often the most fragile. The mask is not protection, it's a prison, and eventually, every prisoner tries to escape. The cost of constant performance. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you felt truly seen? Not admired, not validated, seen. When was the last time someone looked past your mask and recognized the person underneath? When was the last time you let them? Most people go their entire lives without ever being known, because being known requires being vulnerable. And vulnerability feels like death to the part of you that has spent years perfecting your disguise. So you keep performing, you keep mirroring, you keep adjusting yourself to fit the room, to meet the need, to avoid the discomfort of being rejected for who you actually are. And in the process, you become a stranger to yourself. You forget what you actually think because you've spent so long thinking what others want to hear. You forget what you actually feel because you've spent so long feeling what's acceptable. You forget what you actually want because you've spent so long wanting what's safe. The cost of the mask is not just disconnection from others, it's disconnection from yourself. The manipulator's advantage. Now here's where it gets darker, because not everyone is unconscious of their masking and mirroring. Some people have turned it into an art form. They've weaponized it. The true manipulator doesn't just wear masks, they collect them. They study you, learn what you need, and become exactly that. They mirror your energy, your values, your wounds. They make you feel understood in a way no one else has. And by the time you realize it was a performance, you're already entangled. This is how con artists operate, how abusers seduce, how cults recruit. They don't force you into compliance. They mirror you so perfectly that following them feels like following yourself. And the most skilled manipulators aren't the ones who lie. They're the ones who tell you exactly what you've been desperate to hear. They don't create false desire. They find your existing wound and offer to heal it. They don't fabricate need. They identify what you're already starving for and present themselves as the solution. This is mirroring as invasion. And it works because most people are so hungry to be seen, so desperate to be understood, that they'll mistake a skilled reflection for genuine connection. The paradox of authenticity. So what's the answer? Stop masking? Stop mirroring? Show the world your raw, unfiltered self and hope they accept it. That's the trap of modern self-help philosophy. This idea that authenticity is some simple, achievable state. That if you just be yourself, everything will fall into place. But that's naive. Because the self isn't a fixed thing. It's not some pure essence buried beneath layers of conditioning. The self is fluid, contextual, constructed. You are different with your mother than with your lover. Different at work than at home. Different when you're scared than when you're confident. Which one is the real you? All of them. None of them. The question itself is flawed. Jung didn't say to destroy the persona. He said to recognize it, to understand that the mask is necessary, that it serves a function. The problem isn't that you wear masks. The problem is when you forget you're wearing them. When the persona becomes so rigid that it suffocates the totality of who you are. The goal isn't to eliminate masking and mirroring. It's to become conscious of when you're doing it. To choose your masks deliberately rather than wearing them compulsively. To mirror others not out of fear, but out of strategic awareness. The moment of recognition. There comes a point, if you're paying attention, where you start to see it everywhere. You're in a conversation, and you catch yourself adjusting your tone mid-sentence. You're telling a story and realize you're editing it for the audience. You're with someone you love and notice that you're performing affection rather than feeling it. These moments of recognition are uncomfortable because they reveal how much of your life is choreographed. How much of your personality is adaptive rather than authentic? How many of your relationships are built on mutual performance rather than mutual truth? But these moments are also liberation. Because once you see the mask, you can't unsee it. And once you understand that everyone else is wearing one too, the entire game changes. You stop taking people's performances personally. You stop believing that their mask is an attack on your mask. You start to see beneath the surface, to recognize the fear driving their cruelty, the wound beneath their arrogance, the need underneath their indifference. And something surprising happens. You become less reactive, less defensive, less controlled by the theater of social interaction, because you're no longer an unconscious actor. You're a conscious observer. The power of deliberate mirroring. Here's what's powerful. Once you understand mirroring, you can use it consciously, not to manipulate, but to connect, not to deceive, but to create space for truth. When someone is afraid, you can mirror their fear, not to exploit it, but to help them feel less alone. When someone is angry, you can mirror their intensity, not to escalate it, but to validate that their feelings are real. When someone is hiding, you can mirror their caution, not to expose them, but to show them it's safe to lower the mask. This is mirroring as empathy. It's the difference between using someone's wounds against them and sitting with them in their pain. It's the difference between becoming what they need for your benefit and becoming what they need for their healing. The same tool that manipulators use to control can be used to liberate. The question is intention. Are you mirroring to take, or are you mirroring to give? The unmasking. Eventually, if you're brave enough, you'll reach a point where you want to stop performing, where the exhaustion of maintaining all these masks becomes unbearable, where you crave one person, one space, one moment where you can be utterly undefended. But here's what no one tells you. Unmasking is terrifying, because once the mask comes off, you have to confront what's underneath. And most people have been wearing their masks so long that they don't know what's underneath anymore. Who are you when you're not trying to be impressive? Who are you when you're not performing strength, intelligence, beauty, success? Who are you in the dark when no one's watching, when there's no one to mirror and no one to impress? That question will break you open, and you'll resist it. You'll find reasons to keep the mask on. You'll tell yourself that the performance is necessary, that people can't handle the real you, that vulnerability is weakness. But those are lies. Lies told by the ego to protect itself from dissolution. The truth is simpler and more brutal. You're afraid that if people see who you really are, they'll leave. And maybe some will. Probably some will. But the ones who stay, those are the ones who matter. Those are the ones who see past the mask and choose you anyway. The mirror you become. There's a final layer to this, one that most people never reach. It's not just about recognizing your own masks and mirrors. It's about becoming a mirror in a different way. A true mirror. One that reflects people back to themselves, not to manipulate them, but to help them see. When you've done the work of understanding your own masks, when you've integrated your shadow, when you've learned to exist without constant performance, something shifts. You become capable of holding space for others in a way that most people can't. You can sit with someone's darkness without flinching. You can witness their shadow without judgment. You can see through their mask without attacking it. And in your presence, they feel something they've rarely felt before. Permission. Permission to stop performing. Permission to be complex. Permission to be human. This is not the mirroring of a chameleon. It's the mirroring of still water. You don't change to match them. You remain steady, clear, reflective. And in that reflection, they see themselves more honestly than they have in years. The final truth. So here we are, at the end of this descent. And what have you learned? That you've been performing your entire life? That everyone you know is performing too? That authenticity is more complex than you thought? That connection is rarer than you believed? Yes, all of that. But here's the final truth, the one that makes all of this worthwhile. You are not your mask. You never were. The persona you constructed, the versions you perform, the ways you mirror and adapt, those are strategies. They're not you. Beneath all the performance, beneath all the fear, beneath all the conditioning, there is something untouched. Something that has been watching the whole time. Something that knows. Jung called it the self with a capital S. The totality of who you are, conscious and unconscious, light and shadow, mask and face. It's always been there, quiet, patient, waiting for you to remember. And the moment you do, the moment you recognize that you are not the actor, but the awareness watching the performance, everything changes. You can still wear masks, you can still mirror, you can still adapt and perform when the situation requires it. But you'll do it consciously, deliberately, without losing yourself in the process. That's freedom. Not the absence of masks, but the awareness that you're the one wearing them. So look around, at your relationships, at your self-presentation, at the ways you shift and change depending on who's watching. And ask yourself, which of these masks are you wearing by choice? And which are you wearing because you've forgotten you put them on? The answer to that question is the beginning of everything. If this reached you where you needed to be reached, leave a comment. Tell me which mask you're finally ready to see. Not for me, for you. Because the moment you name it, you begin to free yourself from it. This is MindX. Welcome home.